longtime friend, Alex Hars, who last May, I believe it was, can we get Alex's microphone on? I couldn't hear him. Last May, he climbed Mount Everest. No kidding.
That's correct.
I had a board op at that time who came in bragging about climbing a set of stairs. And I said, my guest here climbed Mount Everest. He climbed the stairs in Colorado Springs.
Well, it's a lot of stairs.
What's the Colorado Springs that one?
The incline.
Yeah, the incline, the Manitou incline.
Yeah, that's pretty good feat for someone, from what I understand, but I thought it was funny.
Well, it's also good training for something like the 14ers, Mount Everest, Mount Rainier.
How many times have you climbed those?
I only did it once. I stuck more locally when I was doing my training, my 7-day-a-week routine, because that's a little bit of a drive to go down there, especially when you're going to spend 3 hours training, let alone then the commute back and forth to Manitou. So I did most of it around here.
Lately, Mount Everest has been in the news for a lot of wacko stuff that has happened this year. There's been a lot of deaths on the mountain this year. Some guys charging $11,000 for people to get in line and go up. There's like 800 people in base camp, where normally there's about 100 to 120 people in base camp, and the mountain can't survive that kind of intrusion to its carbon footprint.
Yeah, it's essentially, that's up to the Nepalese government. The Chinese side of the mountain is pretty well regulated. They never reach their cap. And matter of fact, to China, Everest doesn't mean that much to them economically, nor really from an icon perspective. But for the country of Nepal, it's huge. I mean, you got to understand that the third largest source of income for the country, that's the 166th wealthiest country in the world, so they're a very poor country to begin with, is tourism. And, tourism that has to do with climbing and trekking constitutes about $300 million of revenue. So that's quite a bit for Nepal. So they, have the purse strings, directly related to climbing permits, trekking permits, and these kind of things for the 2 months in the spring and the 2 months in the fall. And so, during those 4 months of the year, the Khumbu Valley is one of the richest places in Nepal. And therefore, at $11,000 a pop per Everest permit, that starts to add up a little bit.
Well, when you climbed the mountain, you climbed it. You had the mountain to yourself.
I did.
Now there's lines and stuff forming, and the people just don't care about the ecology, because what you practice, whatever you bring up the mountain, you bring back down.
Yeah, the leave no trace thing. Yeah.
A Boy Scout. I love it.
Yes, exactly. Well, that's a Western edict, primarily Europe, North America, South America and stuff. So
they just recently brought 5 tons of trash down off the mountain. The Sherpas went up and got it, and a couple of more bodies.
Yeah. The Sagarmatha Pollution Control Committee is actually the ones that are in charge of pulling down the trash off of Everest, and they're doing a good job. But you also got to understand, the mountain was first climbed in 1953. And, for many years, everything that went up stayed up. So to pull it all down and then add new expeditions to it is going to take a little bit of time. But, in all fairness to them, they are doing a good job. As a matter of fact, each expedition has a $4,000 deposit that they have to give to the Nepalese government for trash. And if you don't come back down with X amount of kilos, then you won't get your $4,000 back. So for an expedition operator, they have an incentive to make sure to pull that stuff down. And from the Sherpas or the climbing teams, the support staff, they get bonuses for each pound that they bring back down with them. So it's starting to happen, but it's going to take a little bit of time. And then when you got some setbacks like the 2014 avalanche and the 2015 earthquake that shut the seasons down, then you've got, that equipment and that leftover gear from the previous years that are up there. So now the following year, what's their incentive to try to bring all that stuff back down when those teams had to abandon ship, essentially?
Somewhere close to 20% of the people who go up the mountain that actually go up above the base camp's at 17,000 feet.
17,500, yeah.
And then there's another stop at, what's the next one up?
So there's 3 more camps above that. There's Camp 1, and that's at 19,700.
But about 20% of everybody who tries to climb that mountain dies.
Well, that varies from year to year. This year was the 3rd deadliest year in history, and there's a couple factors that came into play this year.
I think that's the overall number. I mean, if you just add them all up, there's only 4,000. Just over 4,000 people have actually made it to the top, and you're one of them.
That's sometimes you got to pinch yourself, and I'm definitely humbly honored to have done so. There's 306 people that have died on Everest.
Now,
So,
are we talking exposure or like Yeti attacks?
Unfortunately, there's no documented Yeti attacks. I would like to film that, but no. Most of that has to do related
Is that
to
a Star Wars thing?
No, it's just that's a wampa. Come on. Now, you said film it. Did you film all the way up Everest?
I did. Actually, I filmed it, not just Everest. I was in Nepal for 63 days filming. 52 of those days were the Everest expedition because that's how long it takes to climb the mountain.
I'm sorry. I didn't know this. 52 days from arriving to leaving Everest.
Yeah. So you start in Lukla. So picture, starting, in Rocky Mountain National Park and then heading towards Everest kind of a thing. And it takes 9 days to trek to base camp. And then from there, I spent another 43 days from base camp.
Because you have to acclimatize or acclimate yourself, your body at each level, and spend X amount of days there before you can move on.
Well, I'm thinking from the trash standpoint of this one. If you're spending 40 days on the ice, no wonder there's a ton of trash getting left over. Yeah, just in food containers.
You went up there, you had a 360-degree camera at the top of your helmet.
I did. As a matter of fact, I had it with me. I filmed it in 4K, so I filmed the whole Nepal story and the Everest portions of it, all that with multiple cameras, 7 cameras, and then I also filmed the whole 52 days expedition in VR as well. So, yeah. So it's definitely.
We're gonna see your VR stuff at lunch after this, aren't we?
Now, is all the post production done? Is it a polished product now?
Not yet. No. Right now, it's sitting with an agency, and they're right now looking to see what's going to happen with it. But the general idea behind it is for it to be an ongoing TV series, with the Quest Nepal being the first installment of that series.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Have you talked to David Attenborough about doing commentary yet?
I have not talked to Attenborough, but he's my man crush, and for those who don't know who he is, I think he's he's my favorite. I should say personality that's in the documentary or unscripted television realm that's currently alive.
Yeah, he just did Blue Planet.
I like Morgan Freeman as a narrator.
I love penguins, but Blue Planet is my jam.
And Attenborough's, he's 90 years old. He still gets down in the dirt, when he's filming the lines and doing his commentary. And he's been doing it for 60 years. I mean, the guy's an absolute icon. I mean, he's definitely my man crush.
I love it. Now, you climbed Everest within the last year. Was this something you've always wanted to do? I mean, some people want to go to space. Some people want to dive. You wanted to climb a mountain.
Yeah. So when I was 14 years old, sitting on a couch in Omaha, Nebraska, I saw something about Everest. And of course, that's about the flattest place you can imagine about having a dream for Everest. But I told myself one day I want to climb that mountain. Fast forward many years, Everest was out of sight, out of mind. I wasn't into mountaineering, outdoor sports. I was more into traditional sports. And then one day I was sitting on my couch here in Denver, and for some known reason, that recollection popped back in my head, and I said, okay. I told myself when I was 14 I want to climb this mountain, so I started the process and started climbing the 14.
You've climbed on almost every continent, haven't you?
I've worked on it. No, I'm trying to do all 7 continents ultimately, but I haven't. I've climbed the highest mountain in South America. I climbed the highest one here in North America, which is Denali in Alaska, and then, of course, the highest in Asia and the highest in the world, which is Everest. So now I've got another 4 to go, but as my buddy Ryan said, Alex, you did this backwards. You did the 3 hardest first. So at least...
Did you climb K2?
No, I didn't.
Where's that?
That's in Pakistan. Yeah. So that's the second highest mountain in the world.
And if we're going by continent, you already knocked out the biggest, so we can move on to Antarctica.
Yeah, Antarctica. Then
Kilimanjaro, I guess?
Kilimanjaro would be Africa, correct. And then there's a place called Carson's Pyramid. It's a rock spire in Indonesia and Papua. And then you've got Mount Elbrus that's in southern Russia.
Now, I know I had you in when the guys who Meru were there, and you got a connection with them, which was a really successful documentary. Yep. I want to talk to you about the film Solo. We'll talk about that after the break. Stick around.
Help! I need somebody. Help!
Another week has come, another week has gone, but the Red Shirt Friday will always remain. Sponsored by the Marine Corps Scholarship Foundation, and rightly so, Mile High Sports.
Hello and welcome back. I had a great time the other day. You're doing a lot of stuff. You're changing the menu around. You're adding different things over at Society. What's going on this weekend? Now that they ripped the Game 7 out of your craw.
You have to admit, normally, like if my team's in the playoffs, I want to sweep all four levels. So this one, we're actually hoping for a Game 7 because I would have loved to see the Raptors win it in Toronto, so Drake could obviously celebrate. But now we're getting down to some renovations this summer, about to put new floors, new ceilings in, some pool tables, and more importantly, I'm working on my pierogi recipes.
Okay.
That's right. You know, all my Pittsburgh friends, I got to get the the caramelized onions, the potato, the cheese, maybe a sour cream recipe. I don't think that's something that you have to make in house.
That's a Polish sausage, right? Or is that the one with potatoes?
No, it's the little potato dumpling.
Yeah, okay.
It's like a Pittsburgh latke. But no, everything's going really well. But I really want to hear more about Everest.
1430
For
Lake Street.
now, is Everest something that Gil and I could possibly do now?
No.
Well, it's extremely hard to do it, but there's a lot of things that come into play with regards to actually pulling it off. And the biggest factor that you can't train for and you can't account for is genetics. You're genetically disposed whether or not you can go to altitude or not, and there's no way you can train around it. There's no way you can take your training with you, and you don't know till you go. So
I had read that once you get above 26,000 feet, and Everest is 29,000, every cell in your body starts to deteriorate. So the time you need to get up above 26 to 29 and back down, that time is very expensive to your body.
Well, actually, you start to deteriorate once you get to base camp. There's never been a civilization that's lived above 17,000.
Mine was deteriorating when you got to base camp.
Man, yours deteriorates on the second floor of this building, Gil. Come on, man.
Yeah, there's never been a civilization that's lived above 17,000 feet because you can't stay there indefinitely. And I lost 25 pounds of pure muscle. And Gil, you saw me before I left. So I was 196 and lean as can be when I left for Nepal. By the time I got back to Kathmandu after the expedition, I was 171. And that was all muscle loss. Because what happens is you can't process.
Because you didn't have any damn fat.
Well, that's that's true. And your body can no longer process proteins, right? So it starts to cannibalize itself. It starts to eat your own muscle. And plus you're burning anywhere between 6,000 to 12,000 calories a day on top of that. But yeah, with regards to the death zone side of things, you've only got a couple days to get up and down, regardless if you're on supplemental oxygen or not, or you're going to die no matter what. You just can't stay up there long.
People can see photos from this on your Facebook, and then do you have a website as well?
Yeah, alexhars.com. So.
But your Facebook, you can follow you on Facebook and your exploits, and go back and look at all of that. What was your expedition called?
Mountain Professionals was the actual expedition team. But you know,
you got a different. It was like Quest.
Yeah, the Quest Everest expedition. Yeah, so the Quest Everest.
So what do they look for on Facebook?
If you go just type in the Quest series. So if you type in the Quest TV series, either in Instagram or Facebook, you'll find it. You can also just Google it, or you can also just Google me, Alex Harz, Harz, and you know everything should pop up there right in front of you.
All right. I'm fascinated by this idea that it takes 52 days from start to finish. I assume this is something you could do in a couple. Now, we know there's only 2 months in the fall. It's like mud season, up here in Colorado. The weather itself, when you're leaving base camp, how cold is it?
It really varies, but the weather itself is what dictates your final summit push, okay? So you go up the mountain twice before you head for the summit, and that's what, like Gil was saying earlier, to acclimatize, have your body adjust to the altitude, produce more red blood cells. Above 23,500, 23,700 feet, you can no longer produce any more red blood cells. Therefore, you don't go any higher than Camp 3. It makes no sense to go above that during the acclimatization period. So you come all the way back down to base camp. But then that final rotation, that third rotation for the summit, which takes 7 days from base camp up and back down, is 100% dependent on the weather. Okay. And specifically based on the jet stream. The actual jet stream flies over the summit of the Everest much of the year. And for about 7 to 10 days in mid-May, it will move off the summit of Everest. And a lot of that has to do with the pushing up of the monsoons out of India that start in early June. And so those pressure systems will move the jet stream off the summit of Everest, and that will give you the window to try to go for the top, and otherwise there's no way you're getting up there. That's also the reason why there was problems this year, because the jet stream was extremely fickle, and they could only predict about 2 or 3 good days that they knew that the 22nd and 24th of May were guaranteed to be good. The rest, they had no idea. So you had a lot of climbers, a record number of climbers that were very anxious because of a cyclone that hit earlier in the month. And then you're going all for the summit at the same time, and you're talking about an area where you saw those traffic jam photos is 18 inches wide with a 7,500 foot drop to your left into Nepal and 12,500 feet into China to your right. You can't move. And so ultimately, when you have that many people going at the same time, you're going to have a traffic jam.
Was there ever I'm actually going to die here moment?
You try to avoid that, but when you see a dead body, for example, and you're all by yourself, and you come across a dead body and you look at it.
The dead bodies are all along the paths and stuff that they climb, and no one brings them back down. They're frozen there.
So, yeah, and it's from year to year, it varies. So I saw one from the sunrise. It was about 27,200 feet. I saw a couple dead bodies, but the one that kind of really hit home at the crucial time was when I was all by myself at 27.2. I stopped there to watch the most beautiful sunrise of my life coming out over China. And then all of a sudden I look to my right and I see this rock. And then all of a sudden a little more sun hit it. And I realized that wasn't a rock. That was a dead body. And he was wearing the same suit I was wearing. And of course, so that kind of gives you some identification. But the other things you realize that everyone there's a type A person. Everyone there's highly motivated. Everyone's trained to do this. And then you look at that person, you say, what's the difference between him being there dead and not me? And so you just got to put your head down, stay focused on the task. And
Yetis.
Yeah.
There we go.
It could have been a Yeti.
The movie Solo, we talked about it briefly on the phone one day, and you actually thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, it was good.
What was that? What do you do that kind of climbing?
No.
He's crazy.
Yeah, he's crazy, and
what was the mountain he climbed?
He did El Capitan in Yellowstone
with no ropes.
Yeah.
He just went up, said, "Okay, I'm going up there."
I'm gonna do a 3,000-foot wall of rock, and he trained, of course, a lot for it. And
how many thousand feet?
3,000. And he did it all in one sitting. And of course, it's one of those things where there's zero margins for error. It's very similar to a guy named Uli Steck, who was the best mountaineer in the world at the time, and he died the year before I got there on Everest. Because again, he climbs in a mountaineering version. He does it without ropes, so he does it just with his ice axe.
Just for you to know, the Empire State Building is about 1,200 feet.
Mm-hmm.
So 3,000 feet is like 3 times that.
And the thing is, you don't have to go really much above 100 to kill yourself. So you have a long distance that you can make a mistake.
Oh, it won't kill you. It's that sudden stop.
It's the stop.
But that was an excellent movie. And of course, that was a pretty significant feat in the world of rock climbing. That's for sure.
Gil and I, we talk movies all the time. Did you watch Alive before you went to Everest?
I did.
Excellent.
I've watched everything you could imagine about it. Matter of fact, even the Everest feature film that came out in 2016, that was with Jake Gyllenhaal and stuff, which is based off the 96 disaster, the John Krakauer book, Into Thin Air. I've seen that, and I've seen everything that you can imagine before I went. But even when I went, it was more than any of that.
It just doesn't prepare you at all for seeing it in real.
No, you can visualize it like an athlete would visualize a penalty shot or a free throw or something like that. You can visualize it, and I did a lot of that. But at the end of the day, it's just a beast.
If you're listening now, when Alex gets close to releasing and having his series actually produced, right now you're in edit, I imagine.
Yeah, and we're in discussions right now.
We will have you back to let everybody know that where they can watch and find that. What are the couple best climbing films you've ever seen?
Well, Maru is a very good one.
Yeah.
Free Solo was really good, and there was another one, and now it just slipped my mind. It's maybe Touching the Void, which was a good film based about 2 guys in South America, and one guy had to cut the rope, and then the guy ended up still surviving after he cut the rope and fell and stuff. So there's some pretty good ones out there. And if you like to watch documentary stuff, where you really get some, first person accounts, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah. And what you did is you went in and interviewed the monks, and you actually it's a very educational series about Nepal and their culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And the rarely untold stories about Nepal. Yeah. And Everest for that matter too.
Can you give us a Nepalese blessing on the way out?
Omani Pendmayom. Yep. It's a very common one.
I just felt better right now. I just felt better. Stick around. Joe Williams coming up. Sans Joe Williams.